The morning of August 24th, 79 AD, began like any other in Pompeii. Bakers pulled fresh loaves from their ovens, their crusts golden and steaming. Merchants arranged colorful fruits in neat pyramids along the forum. Children chased each other through narrow streets while their mothers haggled over fabric prices. The air smelled of bread, wine, and the salty Mediterranean breeze. No one knew that by sunset, their world would cease to exist. No one suspected that the mountain watching over them, the mountain they had trusted for generations, was about to erase everything they knew, preserving it forever in a tomb of ash and stone. Pompeii wasn't just another Roman city. It was a jewel of Campania, positioned perfectly where wealth, culture, and opportunity collided. Founded by the Oscans centuries before Rome claimed it, Pompeii had grown into a prosperous hub of 20,000 souls. Its streets buzzed with languages from across the empire, Greek traders discussing philosophy, Egyptian sailors offering exotic goods, Roman officials conducting business in the forum. The city's walls enclosed 85 acres of vibrant urban life, where grand villas stood alongside modest workshops, where senators and slaves shared the same streets, though never the same destiny. The city's wealth flowed from many sources. Fertile volcanic soil, enriched by ancient eruptions that everyone had forgotten, produced wine and olive oil that graced tables from Britannia to Syria. Pompeii's location on major trade routes meant constant traffic of goods and ideas. The port of Pompeii welcomed ships carrying grain from Egypt, silk from the distant east, and amber from the frozen north. Workshops hummed with activity foolers cleaning togas in vats of human urine, dyers creating vibrant purples from sea snails, blacksmiths hammering iron into tools and weapons. Money changed hands in the forum, in the brothels, in the thermopolia, where hot food was served to workers too poor to have kitchens. Daily life in Pompeii moved to rhythms that had existed for generations. As dawn broke, the city awakened to the sound of wooden shutters opening, vendors calling out their wares, and the rhythmic pounding of workshops beginning their labor. The wealthy emerged from their elaborate homes' mansions, adorned with spectacular frescoes of gods and myths, floors covered in intricate mosaics depicting everything from watchdogs to erotic scenes. These homes opened inward around peaceful courtyards, where fountains sang and gardens provided cool refuge from the Mediterranean heat. The walls spoke of their owners' education and taste, Homer's epics illustrated in paint, philosophical quotes inscribed in elegant Latin and Greek. But Pompeii wasn't a city only for the rich. Behind the grand facades lived thousands of ordinary people whose lives were equally complex, equally human. Slaves carried water from public fountains, their copper vessels heavy on their shoulders. Shopkeepers lived in cramped rooms above their businesses, their children playing in alleys barely wide enough for two people to pass. The working poor gathered in taverns where wine cost a few copper coins, where dice rolled across wooden tables, where friendships and fights erupted with equal passion. Graffiti covered the walls, declarations of love, crude insults, political slogans, advertisements for gladiator games. One wall declared simply, "Successus the weaver loves Iris the innkeeper's slave girl," a moment of human longing frozen in time. The city's public spaces revealed what Pompeians valued most. The Forum, a grand rectangular plaza surrounded by columns and temples, served as the beating heart of civic life. Here, politicians delivered speeches, merchants closed deals, and citizens gathered to debate the issues of the day. The Temple of Jupiter dominated one end, its massive columns reaching toward the sky, while the Temple of Apollo stood nearby, both structures testaments to the gods who supposedly protected the city. The basilica housed law courts where disputes were settled, fortunes won and lost. Justice in Pompeii, like everywhere in Rome, favored those with money and connections. Entertainment held a sacred place in Pompeian life. The amphitheater, one of the oldest permanent stone amphitheaters in the Roman world, could hold 20,000 spectators more than the city's entire population. Here, Gladiators fought and died, while crowds roared their approval or contempt. Blood soaked into the sand as men with tridents faced opponents with nets, as condemned criminals were torn apart by wild beasts imported at staggering expense. Women were not allowed to sit in the front rows, but they came nonetheless, drawn by the same violent spectacle that drew everyone else. Graffiti near the arena praised favorite fighters. Saladus the Thracian makes the girls swoon. The public baths were equally essential to Pompeian identity. 3 major bath complexes offered different experiences, but all followed the same principle: bathing was social, communal, essential to being Roman. Citizens moved through sequences of rooms, from the cold frigidarium to the warm tepidarium to the hot caldarium, their conversations echoing off marble and tile. Slaves scraped oil and dirt from their master's skin with bronze strigils. Business deals were concluded in the steam. Gossip spread faster here than anywhere except the Forum. The baths were democracy in action, though slaves used different facilities. Freeborn citizens of all classes mixed naked in the same pools. Religion permeated every aspect of life in Pompeii. Temples to Jupiter, Apollo, Venus, and Isis stood throughout the city, their altars perpetually stained with blood from animal sacrifices. The Temple of Isis, serving worshippers of the Egyptian goddess, revealed how cosmopolitan Pompeii had become, how Roman identity could absorb foreign gods without losing itself. Small household shrines, called Lararia, occupied corners of nearly every home, where families made daily offerings to their ancestral spirits and protective deities. Pompeians believed the gods watched everything, controlled everything, demanded constant appeasement through ritual and sacrifice. But the gods Pompeians trusted were about to abandon them, or perhaps punish them in ways beyond imagination. Mount Vesuvius rose 6 miles away, its slopes covered in vineyards and farms, its summit reaching 4,200 feet into the Italian sky. The mountain had been quiet for 8 centuries. Generations of Pompeians had lived and died without seeing it do anything more threatening than support grapevines. Few remembered the ancient stories of fire from the mountain. Fewer still recognized the warning signs that had been building for years. In 62 AD, 17 years before the end, a massive earthquake struck Pompeii. Buildings collapsed, temples cracked. The city's water system broke. Panic swept through the streets as aftershocks continued for days. Many wealthy families fled to their country estates, waiting to see if the gods would strike again. But Pompeii rebuilt. Stone by stone, fresco by fresco, the city restored itself. The earthquake became just another story. Another trial survived. Construction was still ongoing in 79 AD. Temples remained unfinished. Public buildings showed scaffolding. Some wealthy homes were still being repaired. The city had survived worse. It would survive anything. The summer of 79 brought smaller warnings that almost everyone ignored. Wells and springs dried up mysteriously. Small earthquakes rattled dishes and nerves, but caused no serious damage. Animals behaved strangely: dogs, howling at nothing, birds abandoning their nests. A few wise men, followers of Greek natural philosophy, whispered concerns about the mountain, but life continued. Grain needed harvesting. Business needed conducting. Children needed feeding. The festival of Vulcanalia was approaching on August 23rd, ironically dedicated to the god of fire and volcanoes. Pompeians prepared to honor the god who might save them from volcanic destruction, never imagining the destruction was already inevitable. August 24th began in absolute normalcy. Archaeological evidence shows that life proceeded exactly as it had for centuries. Bread was in the oven's loaves, later found carbonized, perfectly preserved. Coins sat on shop counters. Meals were being prepared. In one house, eggs were boiling. In another, fish sauce was being mixed. Laundry hung in courtyards. A man named Numerius Popedius Salsinus was in his home, possibly reviewing accounts. Julia Felix was likely managing her large estate complex. Thousands of individual stories were unfolding simultaneously, all about to end together. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Vesuvius exploded. The mountain's summit shattered, sending a column of superheated gas, pumice, and ash 15 miles straight into the atmosphere. The sound was beyond anything human ears had experienced, a roar that could be heard 100 miles away that made the very air shake with its fury. The column rose like a Mediterranean pine tree, its top spreading out in a canopy of death. Pliny the Younger, watching from across the Bay of Naples, would later describe it in letters that became the first eyewitness account of a volcanic eruption in Western literature. Within minutes, pumice stones began falling on Pompeii like deadly hail. These weren't small pebbles. They were chunks of volcanic rock, the size of fists, raining from the sky at terminal velocity. They shattered roof tiles, crushed anyone caught in the open, accumulated on flat roofs until the weight collapsed entire buildings. The sky turned black at midday as ash blocked the sun. People ran through streets they could barely see, covering their mouths against the choking particles, desperate to find shelter or escape. Some fled toward the city gates, pushing through crowds equally panicked. Others ran home to protect their possessions or rescue family members. Still others sought refuge in the strongest buildings they could find. For 18 hours, the mountain buried Pompeii in pumice. The layer grew deeper every minute 6 inches an hour, relentless, unstoppable. Buildings groaned under the accumulating weight. Roofs collapsed, trapping families in their homes. The streets became impassable canyons with walls of volcanic stone. People who tried to flee found themselves wading through knee-deep, then waist-deep pumice, each step exhausting, each breath filled with ash. Some made it to the city gates, only to find the roads beyond equally buried, the countryside transformed into an alien landscape. Those who stayed in Pompeii sought shelter in the most substantial buildings, stone structures with vaulted ceilings that might withstand the bombardment. They huddled together in darkness, listening to pumice hammer against walls and roofs, feeling the floor beneath them vibrate with each impact. Families held each other. Slaves and masters shared the same terror. Some prayed to gods who weren't listening. Others simply waited, hoping the nightmare would end, hoping morning would bring relief and rescue. But morning never came. Around 6:30 a.m. on August 25th, after 18 hours of pumice fall, Vesuvius entered a new, even more deadly phase. The eruption column collapsed, sending the first of 6 pyroclastic surges racing down the mountain at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. These weren't flows of lava, which might have been slow enough to escape. These were superheated avalanches of gas and particles, reaching temperatures of 570 degrees Fahrenheit, annihilating everything in their path. The first surge reached Herculaneum, a smaller city to the northwest, killing everyone instantly. The second surge reached Pompeii. People who had survived the pumice fall, who had endured 18 hours of darkness and fear, died in seconds. The superheated gas didn't burn them conventionally. It killed them through thermal shock, their muscles contracting violently, their bodies assuming the positions they would hold for 2,000 years. A man covering his face, a mother sheltering her children, a slave still wearing the iron shackles that prevented his escape. Each person became a time capsule, their final moments preserved in volcanic ash that hardened around their bodies. Over the following hours, subsequent pyroclastic surges buried Pompeii under 20 feet of ash and pumice. The city disappeared. Buildings that had stood for centuries vanished beneath a gray blanket. The forum, the amphitheater, the temples, the bathhouses, the grand villas and humble shop, all erased from the visible world. Survivors who had fled early, perhaps 2,000 people who abandoned the city during the initial pumice fall, returned days later to find nothing. No streets, no landmarks, no city. Just an undulating gray plain where Pompeii had existed. They dug frantically for treasures, for possessions, for bodies of loved ones. They found some. they missed most. For 1,700 years, Pompeii slept beneath its volcanic tomb. The Roman Empire rose higher, then collapsed. Christianity replaced the old gods. Empires rose and fell across the Mediterranean. The precise location of Pompeii was forgotten, remembered only in historical texts as a footnote, a city that had existed once and was gone. Above the buried ruins, farmers planted vineyards and orchards. Villages developed. People built homes and lived entire lives directly above the entombed city, never knowing what lay beneath their feet. Rediscovery came slowly, then dramatically. In 1599, workers digging a canal accidentally uncovered ancient walls with inscriptions. They found a few artifacts, but didn't pursue the discovery. In 1748, under the Spanish Bourbon monarchy ruling Naples, systematic excavation began. What they found astonished the world, not ruins in the traditional sense, but a city paused mid-breath. Buildings stood to their second floors. Frescoes retained their colors. Wooden furniture had carbonized, but held its shape. Food remained on tables. Graffiti still shouted from walls. Pompeii hadn't merely been destroyed. It had been preserved with accidental perfection, offering future generations an unparalleled window into Roman daily life. The excavations revealed the before in stunning detail. Grand homes like the House of the Faun showcased the wealth and artistry of Pompeii's elite. The famous Alexander mosaic depicted Alexander the Great battling Darius III, composed of over 1 million tiny tiles. The House of the Vetti displayed erotic frescoes that Victorian archaeologists found so scandalous they kept them locked away. The Stabian baths showed the engineering sophistication of Roman architecture hypocaust heating systems, sophisticated plumbing, beautiful decoration. The amphitheater, the forum, the temples all spoke of a civilization at its height, confident, powerful, sophisticated. But the excavations also revealed the after in heartbreaking clarity. When archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli developed the technique of pouring plaster into voids left by decomposed bodies, Pompeii's human tragedy became visceral and immediate. The casts showed people in their final moments, a dog twisted in agony, still chained to its post, unable to escape. A group of gladiators found in their barracks, one still in his chains. A pregnant woman, families clutching each other. A man covering his mouth against the ash, frozen in that futile gesture forever. These weren't archaeological artifacts. These were people, their terror and humanity preserved across 2 millennia. Modern archaeology continues to refine our understanding of Pompeii's transformation. Recent excavations using advanced techniques have revealed previously unknown sections of the city. The House of the Silver Wedding, the Villa of Mysteries with its mysterious cultic frescoes, the Garden of the Fugitives, where 13 victims were found huddled together. Each discovery adds layers to our knowledge. Digital reconstruction allows us to virtually walk through Pompeii as it existed on August 23, 79 AD, experiencing the before with unprecedented accuracy and witnessing the after with sobering reality. The contrast between Pompeii before and after is almost beyond comprehension. Before, a city alive with 20,000 people pursuing happiness, wealth, love, survival, all the timeless human pursuits. Merchants calculating profits, mothers nursing babies, politicians plotting campaigns, slaves dreaming of freedom, artists creating beauty, all the infinite complexity of human life unfolding simultaneously. After, silence, ash, darkness, death frozen in stone. A civilization erased in less than a day, preserved for posterity by the same violence that destroyed it. What Pompeii teaches us transcends ancient history. The city's preservation reveals how similar ancient people were to us. Their graffiti could have been written yesterday. Their struggles echo our own. Their humanity bridges 2,000 years as if it were nothing. But Pompeii also warns us about nature's power, about the false confidence that comes from peaceful years. about how quickly everything we build and believe can be reduced to ash and memory. The Pompeians who ignored the earthquake of 62 AD, who dismissed the warnings of 79 A, who believed the mountain was safe because it had always been safe. They weren't foolish. They were human, making the same calculations we make every day about acceptable risk. Today, 3 million people live in the shadow of Vesuvius, in cities and towns sprawling across the slopes and plains that surround the volcano. Naples sits just miles away, a metropolis of millions. Vesuvius remains active. It last erupted in 1944, and scientists agree it will erupt again. Emergency plans exist. Evacuation routes are mapped. Warning systems are in place. Yet people stay, building homes, raising families, pursuing their lives in exactly the same landscape that killed 20,000 Pompeians. Are they different from the ancient Romans who lived and died here? Or are we all just Pompeians living our days beneath mountains? We hope we'll stay silent, building our cities on foundations. We pray we'll hold, trusting that tomorrow will be like today, even though history whispers that nothing lasts forever and stone remembers everything we forget.